Hey everybody, this is the audio newsletter, Stories are Tools, Not Truths. And it starts with a bit of a statement that stories can define us, perhaps diminish or even distract us. I was recently listening to the historian Yuval Noah Harari. He's the author of Sapiens, and he was talking about the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. And this was recorded back in March 22, and there's a link to it where you can listen to some of his commentary as well. I found it useful. But he started by discussing the narrative fantasy, and I just loved that turn of phrase, that Putin holds around folding Ukraine back into Mother Russia, and how this conflicts with the established sort of historical stories of Ukraine as a sovereign nation state, and that these stories, precede even the establishment of Moscow. So it's a rich tradition as its own nation. So what we have is a war that's built on a primary story that doesn't seem to reconcile. As Yuval would say, it's a narrative fantasy. So stories are really powerful and they're dangerous. And history shows us example after example of the danger and tyranny of a story that was designed to manipulate perceptions. And this says to me that we should hold the stories we tell ourselves lightly and be careful taking on the stories of others. Because, we all carry stories, some unconsciously, and the stories we tell ourselves can limit us and cause conflict both within us and between us. And sometimes the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves diminish us as they keep us small or locked into a mindset that's out of date, or in the case of Putin, convenient. And don't even get me started on the US Roe versus Wade ruling. There's a horror story unfolding. And at a personal level right now, I'm experiencing the end of a set of stories created decades ago about what my life looks like when I'm 60. I'm not there yet, got a way to go. I'm in my 50s. And I realize that the stories we tell ourselves, the stories we tell the world, and the stories we hold around what is true are all open to interpretation. And sometimes our stories define us for better or for worse. So my suggestion is we don't let stories rule our lives. Instead, we be willing to rewrite our stories, especially the kind of stories we continue to tell ourselves to feel safe, but that are simply not true. On this theme of stories, in military strategy, there's a saying that no strategy survives the first contact with the enemy. And perhaps we could adjust that a little to say no story survives the first contact with reality. If you believe that we're not our thoughts, as I do, and we can see that stories are simply narrated thoughts with characters and scene changes, then we get to hold stories as truth very, very, very lightly, which is kind of the point of this newsletter. Stories are a primary vehicle for the transfer of knowledge in many First Nations people, and the 70,000 year Indigenous tradition of the Eora people here in Australia use stories to transfer information around flora and fauna, navigation, social wisdom, and deep ways of knowing. In our curriculum here at Thought Leaders, we teach that stories are a device that we can use to deliver points of view, and specifically we share that a well-crafted story can deliver content in a deeply relevant and engaging fashion. Stories are kind of like the Trojan horse for layered meaning. They open up minds and have the ability to shift points of view in a subtle and a really gentle fashion. A story is kind of held in the mind of the listener or the reader and opens slowly like a well-wrapped gift. There's a wonderful sideways adjacent quality to sharing information via story because elegant stories transmit nuance. And this allows for like a co-created meaning. It's gentle, non-tyrannical as a communication experience. In our curriculum, we then go on to teach that when you command the context as a leader, you have a greater influence on the events around you. If stories come from the bottom of our pink sheet, what we label content, and you can read more about that in the pink book Think, and context is driven by the top of our pink sheets, we get to see stories as tools, not truths. And this then frees you from the static and fixed meaning making baked into many of the stories we tell ourselves or that others tell about you. So stories might very well be gold, but context is royal. My suggestion then as thought leaders is that we share our stories widely, but that we hold them very, very lightly.